I'm still surprised to this day how many people don't know about this, but relative humidity is actually not a good way to check how humid race conditions are. So we're gonna start this run from this car park today, and my first tip is to actually walk a little bit before you get into the jog. It never feels right to go from like sitting down straight to running, so I like to walk a little bit until I'm kind of settled, and then I'll start my run. Next tip, do not change your running form unless it's causing injury. Only change it then as well if you think your running form is what contributed to the injury the most. Running injuries are always a combination of different factors, so you need to make sure that you know what you're changing and for a good purpose. Otherwise, you shouldn't be changing anything at all. My next tip is to run on the grass on the side of the footpath sometimes to give your legs a bit of a different stimulus, land in different angles, get a bit of a break from the concrete. I think variety is always good in running. Alright, so for the next few tips, I got Yoshi here. He's a running coach, and I thought we'd get some tips from him as well. He's got 3 of them. I'll add on 3 more as well on the go. So what's your first tip?
Okay, so as a beginner, I think you shouldn't worry too much about doing the speed stuff. It's mainly just trying to get out there and run. It can be super intimidating to start doing intervals straight out of the gun, so if you need to take your time to roll into it, go straight for it.
Yeah, and to add on to that tip, aiming for a bit of a variety in your training, so hitting a bunch of different paces, I think that should be the only goal. You don't need to know what VO2 max or threshold means. Just try and aim for a bit of variety. Most of your runs usually trickle in that speed, and then do some sweet spot training as well, and I'm sure you'll improve over time like that. What's another tip?
Once you go from beginner to intermediate, I would say don't focus on optimizing everything. So stuff like ice baths, like saunas, all of that stuff. Save it for when you get into the advanced side. Just focus on the fundamentals, make sure you're getting them right before you start trying to do those 1% tweaks.
Yeah, 100%. I think a lot of people go straight into the 1%ers without focusing on like the 30%ers, 20%ers, which is like obviously getting in that volume and getting in that consistent training over, you know, ice bath, which might give you 1% maybe. And yeah, to add on to that tip, I think it's good to remember that progress isn't linear, so you're not going to improve at the same rate as someone else. It's going to depend on your sporting background, running background, like how many years you've been running for. Also your genetics, not everyone's built the same way, so yeah, don't compare yourself. Also, don't worry if you have a period where you're not improving as much as you want to. There will come a time where you improve again, so yeah, progress isn't linear. Next tip is to actually be more aware of morning and evening runs. Technically, if you have a morning run on a given day and wait till the next day in the evening to run, you have a day and a half in between those two. Even though on a calendar it looks like you ran both days, you still get that huge amount of rest in between. And that's how a lot of experienced runners actually have a rest day, even though they run every day in a calendar year.
Try to be as specific as you can, and then listen to your body. No 2 runners, even if they're running the same distance, the same speed, are going to be training the same way. Good examples of that would be Donovan Brader, who runs he's never run over 10 miles or something like that in his life. And then you have Nick Simmons on the other hand, who runs 100-mile weeks sometimes. So even if you have different trainings, you can still have the same outcome. So the next tip is to introduce some down weeks every few weeks. When you introduce them is up to you really, but it's really good to just let your body reset for 1 week before continuing to build your mileage or continuing to maintain your mileage.
Adding on to Yoshi's tip about deload weeks, sometimes when training is going really well and you're stringing together a lot of great weeks and you're still feeling good, you never know when an injury is around the corner. So it's still going to be good to hold yourself back, add a deload week before you even think you need it, because that might be the savior between doing it next 1 or 2 weeks and getting injured and being off for 3 months. And on the contrary, being able to extend that training block for another 12, 16, even half a year. So yeah, think about bigger picture. I think it's better to add a deload week before you think you really need it. So obviously there's a lot of nuance to this, but in a lot of scenarios, I think runners should be focused more on eating enough rather than eating too much. We're running so much and it's a lot of stress on the body, so yeah, make sure to fuel enough. Also, I'm recording this tip mainly so I can eat because I'm so hungry right now. And my next tip is to experiment with different racing strategies. I know everyone says, you know, try a negative split or even split, but I think you can learn a lot from doing a positive split because you realize how hard it is to go out hard and try and maintain that the whole time. So you'll learn more about like where you're at in terms of fitness as well. It's nice to train that like mental side as well. So if it's not a complete A race and you want to just for fun go out quick and see what happens, you're definitely going to train how hard you can maintain a really hard effort for a long time. So I still think there's a time and place to stupid race strategies, as long as it's not your A race where you're trying to PB.
Yeah, I agree with that, because even with my last marathon, I blew up, and it was a good learning experience. I figured out where I start to feel the wall coming
Yeah.
in. So that was a really good experience to
Yeah.
just go past that.
100%. First Maehara, you're always gonna struggle a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah. I'm still surprised to this day how many people don't know about this, but relative humidity is actually not a good way to check how humid race conditions are or even workout conditions. When you want to work out how good the weather is for running and performance, you want to look at dew point. Dew point is the best indicator. I'll put a table on the screen right now to show you what conditions are optimal in terms of dew point for performance and what conditions are really bad. So my next tip is to sometimes go straight from the warm-up to the first rep of the threshold, because it kind of teaches your mind to like not stop and linger around and kind of keep the flow going. I'm not saying do it every single time. I actually got into the habit of doing it quite often though, because I love not pausing for threshold workouts now. I just do the warm-up straight into the first rep, do the jog recovery, do the next rep, whole workout, no pauses. I love doing that. It just gets it done a lot more efficient. Again, not saying you have to. It's kind of a bonus tip to be honest, but I personally like doing that. This tip is something that I'm really big on, but it's really important to not go too fast at the start of your rep, because if you go too fast, you have to actually slow down for the middle half to make sure you hit the right pace at the end, especially if you have a coach that tells you that they want a specific pace. Always remember that the pace is going to end up being the average of that rep, so you don't want to go out too quick, otherwise you have to go slower later on. So it's important to remember that tendons like load, and also it's good to train it to be resilient to all the springiness and load that you put it through. Stuff like this, pogo hops, and then you eventually want to work towards spending less time on the ground, so you can become more bouncy, and you can even progress to single leg as well. So adding that little bit of load each week will actually train your tendons to be able to withstand more load. The next tip is to focus on recovery, because your training is always going to be hindered by how much you recover. If you recover more, you can train more and you can race better. And one factor that will help with recovery is fueling during your runs. If you're in a glycogen depleted state when you run and burn all that glycogen, you're actually gonna be tired for a bit longer, and your perceived effort the next day might be a bit harder, your form might be a little bit worse. And if you're fueling during your runs and you're not in a completely depleted glycogen state, you're gonna feel a lot better the next day, and it's gonna make you train better and race better because of that. Okay, so I often talk about threshold on my channel, and the beauty of threshold is actually in the volume, not the pace. Try and focus on increasing the volume spent at threshold every single week, and then you'll slowly start to feel a lot fitter. I think the pace will come over time. You don't have to worry about pace. Pace will naturally get faster if you do the right training. Focus on volume, not pace. But as a little disclaimer, you don't always need to increase the volume either. You need some weeks where you go down a little bit, but in general, you want to get used to more threshold volume over a long period of time.
So the next tip is to make sure you're not always going off watch, and sometimes you're relying on feel. It's super important, especially when you're doing stuff like hilly tempos, that you're not just going off your watch, because frankly, you're not going to be able to tell when you're going up and down hills. Generally speaking, your body knows what's best for you, so make sure you're going off feel and not by pace.
The most common error in racing is going out way too quick. I think everyone does that, so it's actually really good to just hold yourself back, let everyone do their thing, and then pick people off later in the race. It's always good to leave something in the tank so that you feel a lot better in the second half of the race. So in general, the shorter the race, the longer the warm-up. This isn't the most intuitive for everyone, but when you're racing shorter, obviously you're going at a higher intensity, and therefore there's more anaerobic contribution, and therefore we want to stress the aerobic system a bit more in our warm-up by doing a little bit of threshold in the warm-up, strides, and a bit of a longer jog as well to make sure we're really warm and primed for it. If we do stress the aerobic system and start using our glycolytic system, it's going to start using lactate a bit more as a fuel and raise our lactate values, and you're going to be a bit more smooth and fresh when you go into the first rep, because you have more energy systems contributing to the start of that race. So that's why it's important to actually warm up a decent amount and really feel like you're primed and ready to race. Following on, it's actually good to do threshold in the warm-up, because it allows you to work the glycolytic system a bit more, and that's the intermediate energy system, the one above the aerobic system. And once we're working that glycolytic system, we're actually using lactate as a fuel a bit more, and therefore you're going to feel more primed when you start the workout or the race. A lot of people don't realize that hydrogen ions are what makes your legs feel heavy, but lactate itself is actually still a fuel that helps with running. So don't get those two confused. It's still good to do threshold in the warm-up. The way in which I do this is by doing a couple threshold reps, whether it's 2 by 400 meters with a 45-second jog in between. It doesn't actually need to be anything specific. It can be roughly 300 to 400 meters with about a 30 to 45-second jog in between. So I'm doing my Thursday hills right now, and it was a bit chilly before this, but now that I'm doing the hills, I'm definitely starting to warm up. But the good thing about arm sleeves is you can literally take it off mid-run, and there we go. Super easy, and it's a good way to stay warm in the winter, and you can always take it off if you want. So very handy stuff. Something that I take every single day is 1 teaspoon of beta-alanine and 1 teaspoon of creatine monohydrate. The benefits of these is that beta-alanine, over time, if you take it every single day, about 5 grams, you're gonna have better lactate buffering benefits. And with creatine monohydrate, it's gonna help you a lot with recovery. So these are stuff that you need to take every single day, and you can actually cycle through them. So after about 3 months, when you do your goal race, you can go off it for a little bit if you want, but there's no harm into doing it the whole year round. And this is something that's heavily researched, and in the AIS supplement framework, which is the Australian Institute of Sport, it's in the A category, so very highly researched, no horrible side effects or anything like that. The only thing with beta-alanine is you can get tingling sensations in like your upper body or even down the arm if you don't have it with food. There's no dangerous side effects though, it's just a feeling. And it's a little bit uncomfortable, but if you don't want to feel that, have it with carbohydrates, so with your food, and you'll be fine, you won't feel it at all. When you're doing your marathon pace sessions, make sure to take your gels during the rep where you're running marathon pace, because there's no point practicing when you're running slow, because on race day, you're gonna be doing it at marathon pace. So get used to opening the gel packet during marathon pace, consuming it, because I think you'll thank yourself later when you're actually in the race. The next tip is misconceptions about strides. A lot of people think that strides are good for building top end speed, but you're actually not running for long enough to actually stress that anaerobic system. It's a very short effort. The benefit of strides is actually the neuromuscular benefit. So you're teaching your nervous system to recruit the right muscle fibers in the most efficient way possible. When you're first new to running, your form isn't going to be the most efficient. You might even recruit 2 muscle groups that work against each other, so the flexors and the extensors. Once you do more strides, your body's going to work out the optimum amount and the minimum amount of muscle fibers it needs to recruit to get you from point A to point B as fast as possible. In your running shoe rotation, it's good to have a variety of different types, some that are flexible, some that are not flexible at all, really stiff, some that are firm, soft, high drop, low drop. This is going to help you work different parts of the leg and not get injured in a certain part. If you wear the same shoe every single day, all the time, you're going to stress the same part of the leg all the time, and you might stress that part too much. Honestly, sometimes you should just run for the sake of exploring and seeing what's out there and just chilling and not really caring about performance. Like, at the end of the day, you're still running, even if you pause in the middle of the run and kind of chill for a bit. So resetting sometimes, running with no real purpose sometimes is also kind of beneficial for the long term. So enjoy the sport. Have times where you're focusing on a goal meticulously, and then other times where you're chilling. And I think that balance is really important for longevity in the sport. So that's my little last bonus tip. Anyway, we're gonna leave it there, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video. Leave a like, comment below what you thought, any other tips that people should know of. I tried to keep the tips short so that I can get as many in as possible in a short amount of time. So I didn't really elaborate on some of them, but I have made a lot of videos on a lot of the tips that I gave today. So make sure you go check out other videos on my channel. And also let me know what you want to see next. And subscribe. I'll see you in the next one.